Well, all right, all right, all right, all right, all right. All right, volume looks okay. God, I gotta do this other one too to see on the YouTube. That way I can see the chat from the other way. We're going to continue a conversation from William, but we're going to contemporize it today the best that we can anyway. And today will just be the framework for which the conversation can be contemporized today. Cabrini Thursday, December the 21st, 2023. It's about 8:37 a.m. And of course, I'm B1 Brother Moses. Appreciate y'all for coming and rocking with me. Wow, they don't have mine listed. There it is. They pushed me to the bottom of my own thing. Like, sheesh. Now let me pop out the chat. Pop out. There it is. Okay. So now that I got the chat popped out, Cabrini Thursday. What's up, Isis? How are you? Hey, we finna have a conversation. We've been talking about W.E.B. Du Bois, and it's not just that social psychology and that African American experience or the Black experience um, are trending topics. A lot of folks like to talk that Black shit, talk about Black folks. Um, we can easily identify with the political elements of it, but the scholarly part is where sometimes we fall short. And so I'm gonna take a little bit of a moment today and dive into this generalized question I was asking about Du Bois. It was intermarriage, it was, the mulatto, tragic mulatto story, and we can contextualize it today. My boy, Real Lamar, good morning, my G. And so when I do so, I'm gonna share the screen a little bit because I like to put a little bit of engagement at least out there so you're not just listening to my avatar. But yeah, we're gonna talk about it. I might get a little bit messy, so y'all rock with me. All right, so what I'm sharing on the screen first should be the crisis. Absolutely. I see the crisis up, so we're good to go there. And a part of this intellectual part is just not saying Black men love to chase white women, Black men love to chase white women, but to be able to dismantle that psychology. And I'm looking in spaces where I'm supposed to be looking as somebody who went to college. I'm supposed to use the right sources and be able to say, that according to these sources, this is what's happening. And in our society, that field of study is called sociology. But today, people like to talk about the trends of behavior, like the behavioral science behind why Black people are acting a certain way, Black men particularly. And what really unhinges me is that the conversation today is taking that spin towards Black women, Black women, Black women, and girls. And it's not in their protection and for the preservation of the culture of their image and of what's virtuous and valuable, but in an attempt to continue to smear and degrade the Black woman and the Black girl, to make her image synonymous with untrustworthy or conniving and in other ways disrespecting the Black man as well, her father. I'm a Black man, and I'm a girl dad. I got a son as well, so I do have a vested interest in seeing the protection of um, that image, seeing that there are alternative perspectives available. And so, with one way we can do so by looking back in time at some of those folks who had this conversation when they say the Black family was strongest. This example that I'm taking you to is a continued through the crisis, and it is an examination of the man act. I took that with creative liberty because there were actual man who were legislators, their last name man, um, at that time, or their surname man at that time, two of which were important in the last conversation. One who the Mann Act dealt with, the white slave being trafficked, and that was Chicago legislation. And then there was another man who authored some legislation. It was a lot more racially hinged. And his or this man family was out of Virginia, and he was called out by W.E.B. Du Bois. More particularly, Du Bois called out his brother. And the call out happened because they were examining the intermarriage dynamic. And Du Bois has some good words. I mean, he threw it out there in the defense. You could take it how you want, whether it was the defense of Jack Johnson or calling out Jack Johnson, but he said that they would definitely prefer the methods of the Jack Johnson to the brother of the governor of Virginia. Now, the brother is not the author. The governor of Virginia was the other author, but he was using his brother as a call out. On today, though, I kept turning the page. I got by that one, and we read more. There's so much in this. Again, says 310 pages. He was putting out publications that were crazy thick. But I want you to look at this image on the bottom right with the Native American with the feather on his head standing upright in his full masculinity, being guided by a feminine avatar. There's one sitting, and then there is what appears to be two additional images, all facing what appears to be the retreating Roman. And I would say the retreating Roman just based off of the type of headwear that it is depicted as having on. And there is other things inside of the image as well, like what it's clutching in its right hand as it's retreating. And when I looked at this image, at first I was just going to let it go right by. And then I was like, the equality and justice, one of the panels on the Schurz Monument. It's probably in New York, I believe. I know I was looking it up a little bit, but the standing upright versus the sitting is what kind of appealed to me. The female avatar that is clutching the hand of the what appears to be Native American, iconic with the feathers behind its head, kind of leading the hand, but also the what appears to be the African standing upright images, or the Black standing upright images, with the woman behind that one, what appears to be a male avatar, as so depicted. And thus, the retreating Roman, or the Roman whose face is looking back towards them, but body is aimed away, is similar to the sitting avatar. Now, the sitting avatar appears to be feminine, resting, and conversation worthy. The idea that there is a Black or an African that has a female at its back facing the retreating Roman has some significance. I mean, and when I look at it symbolically, one being guided, one being held or affirmed, there is an absence of another male avatar unless the sitting avatar is actually mirroring what appears to be the male Roman avatar. What was most endearing about this, not just the retreat of the Roman, because again, this is on a German praising monument, Karl Schurz. That's a German. Not the details that seem to grasp the race or the ethnicity or the status. But what was most endearing about it is proximity. Their adjacency of who was first spoke volumes, particularly because the style of helmet that they put on the retreating avatar and what that timeline would indicate. This is well beyond any of the Roman era. And so it would only be a depiction symbolizing the imitators. And while there are some indications, like the chains between the Romans' hands, which could either be intact or appear to be broken, that bondage type of image could have just as easily been the chains on the necks of any of the upright, the Native American avatar or the what appears to be the Black avatar standing. What was most endearing is that the force element that would have, more easily caught my idea if somebody wanted to depict the Roman and their relationships or their interrelationships with other ethnicities and groups, particularly here in America. But the idea that the Romans would have had the upper hand of force, that the Romans' chest would have been towards the Black, the Native American, or the indigenous, not his ass, that he could turn back to face even in retreat, it just hits a little different. Now, again, this is the same crisis that was speaking not so highly of the whites, but in its reconciliation with their faults. So that psychological basis W.E.B. Du Bois, he looked at sociology, psychology. He looked at a lot. He was a historian. I think for the better part of his contribution is that he detailed, like with receipts, the progress of Blacks in America all throughout. And they did a good job at also being inclusive, from the Black perspective and otherwise, of what was really happening. So the news at the time then, the receipts, but also the opinion pieces. I'm going to pivot to something more contemporary as we examine this conversation. And for the next one, James S. Jackson, 1944 to 2020. Social psychologist, founding director of the Program for Research on Black Americans at the Institute for Social Research. Key roles were the training and mentoring of doctoral students, postdoctoral scholars, and early career scientists. His notable works or contributions include the National Survey of Black Americans and the National Survey of American Life. And according to the American Psychological Association, he's notable for furthering our understanding of stress and coping processes and the impacts of racism and discrimination on health and well-being of Black Americans. From his economic contribution stand, he was a part of a book, Family Life in Black America. Saying all that, We're finna get into who he is. And when I do so, y'all know I love to be petty, so I gotta turn my camera on a little bit. They say don't talk shit to a motherfucker unless you're willing to show your face. Hold on, I take my two cools off. Now, arguably, in the American Psychology Association, our best representation is James S. Jackson. And they took a while and they took the liberty to allow people to chime in and talk about the great man, James S. Jackson. And if they did so, and he is supposed to be the prevailing thought that helps us better understand the African American and the Black man psychologically in America, let's go on and take that quick look at him. You know what I'm saying? Since he's the guy that gets all the work. So what I'm going to share is, I need to share my slide point. Let me see. That one right here. Good enough? Nah, that ain't even good enough. Go full screen for him. All right. And once you see his picture, it makes it kind of easier to draw the contemporary connections that I was finna make, because it didn't take too long for me to say, yeah, and then yeah. If that nigga right there don't look like Jonathan Majors, I said, bruh, man, this dude look just like Jonathan Majors. This has got to be the best worst case scenario that we can have in America. I'm trying to have the conversation about Cabrini Thursday. Hold on, man. See, my brother, I had a brother one day, and in the YouTube space. His name was C Boogie. And C Boogie is out of Baltimore. And so you can see how a dude from Cali could rock with a dude from Baltimore, because B more, they be on their business like that. They know something out of Baltimore. Them Philly cats, they be knowing something. Them Baltimore cats, every once in a while, if you can get past some of they mush mouth people out the South, you can find you a Baltimore nigga that knows something. You know what I'm saying? Just like a good Texas nigga. If you find one of them triple OG Texas niggas, they'll break down this race relation conversation so damn swell. Now you find you a Florida OG, triple double OG Florida, he got to be somewhat other than not black. But my dude C Boogie said, you got to use the damn lip gloss shit. You got to put on the classic lip balm medicated shit. You got to hit them lips, bro. Man, I live in a desert, man. It be contagiously dry out here. Take a morning walk, come back, and your skin feels different. You go to the down south, you let that heat hit you, that conventional oven. It could be right now, but it just feels a little different. There ain't nothing that I could do to stop my contagious ashy lips. My wife kissed me in the morning, mwah, and then she put on lipstick afterwards, because she be like, them lips is contagious. Like, the people that be making pizzas and they be flipping the pizzas up in the air, the Italians, they flip the pizzas and they catch it and all the powder goes at, the basketball players that come into the game and they have their little basketball rituals. That's what it feel like I do, like every 5 minutes, like them little powder donuts, man. You would swear the police out here gave me an official mascot outfit, and all they gave me was the powder from my lips. Man, these lips be contagiously ashy. Unlike the person on the screen who I be calling myself roasted. So I got to put me on the screen just so like anybody can roast me at all times. But I be trying to go after big dogs. Unfortunately, this nigga died already. So it's going to be hard to go after him. He may have a lot of students in psychology and in the field and mentees that have learned a lot from him, because he was the director of the program. That meant there were people coming to him. And so he got a little older. But if this was him as a youngster and he did all of his devoted research on studying black folks, I need to know about that shit. If the American Psychology Association is basing its understanding of the Black American experience and the family life of Black America off of this man's work, his thoughts, and the way that he thinks about life, I need to know that shit before we start recommending our brothers from the streets or out of the jail system or wherever they may walk themselves into a situation of saying, yeah, I might need mental health clarity. I might need some support with the way I'm processing how I'm thinking about my life's journey. If the brothers are going to be going to these spaces of psychology and saying, I need help with my life right now, and all psychology is basing their understanding on how to treat niggas off of the way this nigga wanted to be treated, I just think we should know that. You see what I'm saying? It seemed like a long stretch of psychology to go from W.E.B. Du Bois, who died in Africa because it just wasn't reconciling here in America. We don't find too many Black psychologists being examined. So every once in a while, we got to find one. I'm going to tell you his name, and then afterwards, we can just say James S. Jackson. He one of them Jackson thems. He one of them Jackson boys. You see Jackson, and so we gonna hit him. We gonna hit him in his head a little bit. Du Bois. To be a poor man is hard, but to be a poor race in a land of dollars is the very bottom of hardship. There's one. Du Bois. The power of the ballot we need in sheer self-defense and as a guarantee of good faith. And then I'm going to give you one more. Du Bois, let those people who have yelled themselves purple in the face over Jack Johnson just sit down and ask themselves the question. Granted that Johnson and Miss Cameron proposed to live together, was it better for them to be legally married or not? Jack Johnson did his time. He was sentenced. They made him pay $1,000. He went to Joliet Penitentiary for 366 days over his woman. They were asking out of the Chicago Tribune to pardon Jack Johnson and redress an injustice that man had to go to jail over that pink. Boxing legend Jack Johnson served nearly a year in prison for a racially motivated conviction. It's time to grant a posthumous pardon that restores his, and I believe they would say something like honor, maybe dignity, or his namesake, his legendary claim. But he went to jail over that pink, didn't he? They said, lock him up. Oh, lock him up. They said, give her up. Nah, I ain't give. That's my wife. And so today, James S. Jackson, not Johnson. We always talk about them Johnsons, but it's not just the Johnsons. After the Johnsons, there's also the Jacksons we got to deal with. Some of these Jackson thems. This guy. Let me picture a little bigger. These folks don't want to act like it's not a contemporary issue. Will be the shaper and the developer of the psychological minds as they presume that they can treat Black folks, that they can treat Black folks' experiences because it must be a monolith. That the individual Black experience in America, who might cry that there was racial discrimination and prejudice that impacted his decision-making, that his options felt limited. And if he goes to a space where he's supposed to talk about his feelings, why did you do the selling of the drugs, young Black man? Why did you feel like robbing somebody in the community was your best option? Young Black boy, when you were making those decisions and you were acting out, and your acting out impacted other people in negative, harmful ways. Why were you acting out? They want James Jackson, the way that he's hugged all the way up with white folks, and his perspective to be the perspective that guides the way the shrinks think about the niggas. Challenges that we have today. Number one, there are some prerequisites And the prerequisites to getting help, denial and the ability to overcome. And once you've stopped denying that there is an issue and that that issue might be particularly within you or your behavioral patterns or the way that you're thinking about things, once you stop denying that as an individual, there's another prerequisite. Even outside the individual, there's the external factors that determine whether or not help is feasible. Some of those external factors America is yet to address for real. It's not just this stereotype or this stigma that Black folks don't want to go to the hospital to get help, some Tuskegee experiment shit. Some of our concerns are very valid, even in 2023. Racism and discrimination. Let me stop the screen share. We don't need to keep looking at that, dude. We see where we're going with this. We got it. We don't look at the conditions to which James Jackson lived and surrendered himself. And then once he made his opinions about Black people, they call that the God book. His theories and practices and the way that he enumerated it with the National Survey of Black Americans and the National Survey of American Life, the way that he can get Black folks' opinions and put together a database that's no longer subjective about Black people. He can become an authority on the Black experience in dealing with racism, and his family photos will show you just how he can be called such authority. And the issue is, when we look at the American Psychology Association, they themselves issue an apology. Let's do it. Let's not leave it to be one brother Moses saying it. There are some very real prerequisites that have to be met. APA PsychNet, James Jackson. Man, they just took that dude right off the screen. Like, hold on, you don't need to talk about him. Let me make sure y'all can see it now, because it be getting all crazy. Okay, I can see it a little bit, but the words look like they're in font nothing. Turn the screen up. They be acting like they don't want nobody to even read it. Look, the font don't even want to get no bigger. Abstract, because we nosy around here. We want to know who we talking shit about. When we tell you, when we tell our wives or tell our children, tell our friends or whoever it is, tell our employer, whoever it is that we got to tell, that the field of psychology ain't ready for niggas. They don't have enough doctors that understand Black American experience. They're still operating on the lens of their racism, and the only way that it seems to make sense to white people is if a Black man walks in already ready to kiss their ass. If a Black man is already coupled up next to the white folks and he knows how to be a good white Black man lover, whatever you want to call himself, he's free to love, all free loving person, then they think they can give him some help and assistance. But outside of that, Negro, how the fuck are they gonna be able to talk about anything if they ain't trained no niggas yet? So let's talk about James Jackson, the nigga who said he was there to train them niggas. He's remembered as a groundbreaking social psychologist. His career contributions in scholarship, research, and service were fundamental to the field of psychology. This article briefly outlines his career work and contributions. A strong believer in interdisciplinary work, his research spanned other related social science disciplines, sociology and political science, as well as health and social welfare professions, public health, social work, and medicine. As the founding director of the program for research, which I said earlier, he initiated and led a long-standing program with a dual focus on the research and training and mentoring doctoral students, postdoctoral scholars, and the early scientists. Jackson's efforts in the development of several nationally representative surveys, like I've mentioned, revolutionized, researched, focused on the lives of Black Americans. And so today we can just ask ourselves, when people talk about Black folks, why is it so popular just to talk shit about Black folks? It's popular just to talk shit, but even in academia, they are still funding research for folks who want to look and examine Black folks. Now, I know some people like to use the colloquial eugenics society and conspiracy theorists when they say they're examining Black folks, a Tuskegee experiment way of looking at research and development. It's theirs. If that's the way that they feel about it, okay. But interdisciplinary research is always still going to be important. And knowing who are the founding fathers in each of these fields and what principles they stand on, this is our information to continue to share. If he is the guy being honored and held for creating this legacy with international influence and reputation, then we should know, as they guide us towards a world where we create more biracials. Impact statement, public significance statement. James Jackson made many contributions to the discipline of psychology. He developed a body of empirical knowledge on the lives of Black Americans that furthered our understanding of stress and coping processes. Oh, that sounds real good. It sounds absolutely real good. Award for Distinguished Scientific Applications to Psychology. Distinguished Contributions to the Public Interest. James Sidney Jackson. All right, so it seems like we're talking about somebody who's worth talking shit about in the very least, right? We got to lay the premise, right? We can't just go in talking shit. If we talking shit about W.E.B. Du Bois, who was a Pan-Africanist, who everybody knows his name. And now I've spent time going in reading the works of W.E.B. Du Bois from the 1900s. He brought us with he's the Harvard grad. He's the guy. So of course we're supposed to criticize them if they're the people that they're telling Black America we should look up to somehow, right? So I'm bringing it forward. I actually reviewed his book. I reviewed some of his works, some of his articles. I keep showing you the screen of the publication of The Crisis, how deep and in depth it was. People who wanted to be Pan-African and go to Ghana or go to Liberia, go to Ethiopia, they were going. There is no Garvey was an XYZ. I'm going all the way back to before Garvey got his boats and shit. If people wanted to leave, they were able to leave. Pan-Africanism in America is a matter of choice. And there are a lot of people say, when I get my money up, I'm going to be good. And that's not the actual reality. Getting your capitalist desire up, whatever you're able to do here. If you can do it here in America, you could have did it in Mississippi or Cleveland, and you can do it in Cali, or you could do it in Texas. It's still just the matter of choice when you are the person. And now we get to issue number 2. If it's not the person and the externalities, like his own family saying don't get help, don't be a part of the Tuskegee experiment, Black people don't get help, we don't go to the hospital, and all of these weird ass shits that they like to say about Black folks, then we have to examine it from the lens of its institutional deficits. And I made a statement that the American Psychiatric or Psychology Association, Psychiatric Association, whichever one, American Psychology Association, they were the ones who apologized. And so I also want to put that on the screen for Cabrini Thursdays. Because if I'm talking shit, we got to talk shit on principle. We're still standing on principle. We're saying that Black men at times need to get help. And if people keep saying that, particularly the Black women, encouraging or insisting and even at times demanding that the Black man get out of himself, get out of his comfort zone and go get help, the primary argument that a lot of Black men are making today is that there's nobody there that can help me. And so I want to show you the actual apology from the American Psychology Association, if I can, as a part of Cabrini Thursdays. People are saying things and they're talking, and it's trauma therapy and intergenerational trauma therapy. There's a lot that's being said. And so with that, let's make sure we're standing on facts. If there is an available clinic or counseling session and they're able to find a Black person that they can speak with, then we applaud you wherever you're at. That might be prevalent in places where there are higher levels of Black excellence. You may find Black psychologists in PG County. You may find Black psychologists in places in Gwinnett County. You may find Black psychologists, on the outskirts of DMV, other DMV. There's places where you might find Black psychologists. But for the average Black man, he's not picking up the phone, calling a crisis hotline, and being able to speak with a Black doctor. I went to the American Psychiatric Association, shows less than 1 out of 10 Black men seek mental health support. And they were interesting enough. It looks like a course to which they're even giving credit for people who can complete it. And so, again, because I'm nosy, I want to go on and get into it and see what it is that they think should be taught on recognizing Black men's mental health matters. Today is Cabrini Thursday. Today seems like the perfect day to have a conversation, since that's what it seems the Black woman, the media narrative, and so many others are pointing to. If the Black man wants to improve himself and his family, he needs to seek help, right? The statistics show from them that less than 1 out of 10 are actually seeking help. I'm going to show you their apology, but I'm also going to show you what they're talking about here as the learning objectives. After reading this article, candidates will be able to describe how Black men's mental health is challenged by racism and so forth. And again, I showed you James S. Jackson, Sidney Jackson, the person whom they're relating to, and how coupled up he was with whiteness. The argument that we have is whether or not, and it's just an argument once again, whether or not mental health support services can be effective in supporting Black folks, particularly Black men. People are saying it. So let's take a moment, Cabrini Thursdays, and look at what are some of the learning materials that those people who actually do go into the field, what they're getting credit for once they've been able to read and process and understand. All right, let me stop sharing this screen so I can actually share the continuing education screen. Got to say it out loud because my brain be forgetting exactly what the hell I'm doing and which screen I'm trying to pull up and all of that. And I got to be like my dude C Boog. Once you start using the medicated lip balm, you can never stop using the medicated lip balm. The expectation is that you're always putting this shit on. And for me, I feel like I am effeminizing the fuck out of myself because it feels like I'm applying lipstick the same. When I see my wife put on the lipstick and shit, it look like she does the same motherfucking shit, man. I feel like a nigga putting on lipstick when I put that shit on. But oh well. My brother C Boogie said put on lip gloss. I'm putting on the chapstick, man. He said, if you're going to have an audience, you got to groom like that. You know what I'm saying? You got to take care of those basic, you know me, I click this motherfucker out too, man. I really don't, like people look at me and they be like Moses, I really don't take myself that serious. Like I wear the oddest socks, like I socks, like, people wear black or white socks. Like, no, I put on the cartoon socks. I don't really care like that. Like if I go out in public and I feel like I got to go out in the world, I might look just as representative of everybody else that's out there in the world with my crazy looking socks on. But it's my way of saying, yeah, leave me alone then, or ask me about my socks then, but leave me alone, because it'd be so much. And I live in Arizona. It's an open carry state. And so anybody who feels comfortable enough to just open carry, and everywhere where they go, they already on different levels of psychological comfort than I am anyway. So what mental health conversation can we have with somebody who's already comfortable walking around with a pistol on hip everywhere they go? because we had a conversation with the little homies. Nobody's going to ask them, why do you feel so afraid every day that you feel you need to carry some type of self-defense weapon with you? Why do you feel like you are the one that is susceptible of becoming a victim of a violent crime in America? And they don't want to deal with that. Who is going to be able to provide an efficient mental health examination on fear in America to Black boys? Now, granted, there are plenty of conversations to which they may have some universal resonance. What you say might resonate, whether it's Black, white, Mexican, Asian. Let me see. I said it out loud too, which one I wanted. And then right when I got to it, oh, there it is. Black men's mental health matters. Psychologists are working to develop more effective ways following the fatal police shooting of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri in 2014. Oh, wait, let's start with the learning objectives. After reading this article, CE candidates will be able to describe how Black men's mental health is challenged by racism. 2, discuss the most critical intervention points for Black men's mental health. 3, describe successful treatment types for Black men, both traditional and innovative. All right. And then for CE credit for this article, they even have the link. All right. So let's get into it from the poet, Prentice Powell. Being a Black man in America means being my brother's keeper. Being a Black man in America means being my brother's keeper while keeping a distance from my brother because I don't trust him further than I can see him. It's believing the cops don't care about you. It's learning how not to doubt yourself because when you're born, everyone else already does. This article goes on to say police brutality toward Black men as exemplified by the murder of George Floyd under a white officer's knee highlighted the particular range of mental stressors Black men experience. For psychologists who work with, study, and support Black men, that incident and the resulting protests were an added call to find better, more effective ways of promoting Black men's mental health, said Howard C. Stevenson, PhD Director of Racial Empowerment Collaborative at the University of Pennsylvania, and a national expert in helping people of color address and heal from racism. Now, I would expect the University of Pennsylvania to create greater access for Black men who would raise their hand and say, I am past the point of denial. I am the one who's actually doing some real dumb shit in this world. Like if Black men know that they're the ones who aren't, no, they might not be the one, the verbally abusive Black man who compares the fact that he's not going up against his woman's head as a sign of she should be grateful, right? That this human being is not receiving actual physical violence from him is the prize. That's the reward. So that verbally abusive man who says, you know what, that is on me, because there are 8 billion people in the world, many to which that I do not know. And had it not been for proximity and access, there is no way that the individual that they are threatening would receive those threats, so that it is apparent that person that they are with is not being verbally threatened by anyone else in the world. 8 billion people. The only people threatening violence or using violence against that individual at that moment is the loved one, is him. is the black man saying, you are lucky I'm not going up against your head. And that black man can be talking to his wife. He could be talking to his daughter. He could be even talking to his kids, using the threat of violence against his loved ones. Now, what really makes that a conundrum is that here in America, there are so many people who claim to be white supremacists. That same black man can go and pick any of them. He can go and find any of them, from the police officer who looked at him wrong, from the old manager who said you're fired because you were 15 minutes late out of your entire life, and the hours that you were commit to that laborer. Being 15 minutes late on a day can be grounds for firing. You can work 10,000 hours for a company and be fired over 5 minutes. And there are some Hebrew Israelites who would continue to encourage you to make that slavery your mental reality. But in places like Pennsylvania, I expect that they've created access for black men who feel like their behavioral patterns are the reason that they can get help. That yes, if they were the ones not using the threat of violence against their own loved ones, that maybe they could find better progress in life. That if the violence they were willing to enact on their own loved ones was ever geared towards an actual enemy, maybe they could find themselves being more loved or received, valued in their home beyond a paycheck. But that the threat of violence itself has been normalized for the nigga. He says it as if the person is supposed to say, well, thank you for not hitting me then. And he says it to woman, he says it to child. And if there are 8 billion in the world and 50% may be women, there are at least 3.5 billion other men that nigga can actually go talk that shit to. Why is it that the nigga wants to aim that verbal abuse at his own loved ones and call that love or chastisement or whatever? No, you're just threatening violence. You doing that white shit. You think if you beat a nigga ass that's going to change their behavior, so you want to be a disciplinarian in the way to which spare the rod or spoil the child. I hear you. I hear all the religious undertones that men use when they want to enact violence. And by repressing that violence and not using that violence, what happens to the man? What's left of a man who would otherwise be violent, that now has found himself doing athleisure type shit? You're not getting paid to do it. You're just athletically, because athletics and leisure make up. You just go to the gym. You got to work out. You're an alpha, so you got to go. You hit the weights or something. Go to the basketball court. Throw some elbows. You got to do something else in your time to accommodate the fact that being violent is not accepted. And particularly in an age where you need to show excessive love and patience and gratitude with your loved ones, how is it that the black man can only extend those love and patience and submission when it's the police authority present? Now he does know that there is a way of going about business. And if he's not willing to humble himself with the police, then what are we looking at? More George Floyd incidents, where George Floyd was humbled by the police and still died? Are we saying that we want more people to not humble themselves in front of the police? I'm not that dude. But they want to show the constraint and not be violent towards the police while leveraging the threats towards their loved ones and family of violence with impunity. And until that black man can address that for himself and say, why am I extending my violence towards those I love? And is there something in my psyche that causes me to say it's okay to be violent towards those I love, but not violent towards those who would call themselves my enemy? When they can undo that, when they can fix that imbalance and find themselves at some measure of resolve, I think they would land on the side that says, no, I do not even have to threaten my wife or my children with violence. Like, do you whoop your kids? Yeah, but you don't got to threaten when you whooping your kids. You don't got to threaten, oh, I'm going to beat your ass when I get home. Nah, when your son, your son did something wrong, your parents, you're the parent and your parenting style is maybe a little bit different. Some people like to leverage threats. The challenge that we find with domestic violence, or what people call child abuse, or the unaddressed issues with psychology, is that as the parent, it is the parent's regard towards how they choose to discipline. As a man, it was always that man's regard towards how he chose to discipline his peers. So in our collaborative, accommodating mind, when we move back into spaces where there are others who would call themselves out to get us effectively in the workforce, our slavery, as the Hebrew Israelites may call it, we show patience and regard even when it comes to who we threaten and how we threaten. The very ones who would file those claims against us in the job or whatnot, that 15 minutes he was late. Oh, I got to put this on your evaluation. I got to, your monthly eval, your progress. Oh, you're not a high performer because of your attitude. That 15 minutes late is sending a bad message, even though you've worked for the company for over 10,000 hours. All of the reasons that they could use to tell the black man that he's $40,000 a year for his hour versus, the white man and the others that are at the company. Even women then passed up the black man and in some of those jobs and industrial occupations. They let the gays go on and come on in, and they get the resources and tools to where, they can be protected in the workforce. But what's wrong with that nigga? What is wrong with the black man? Can he not discipline his own mouth when it comes to his feelings? When he feels disrespected? When he feels like somebody is calling him out or attacking his character? When he feels like people are throwing him under the bus? What is wrong with that black man? When the black man finally does take all the gaslighting and say, yeah, there must be something wrong with me and how I am responding, he will find himself going to one of these spaces. And one of the questions he will ask is for representation. He may request that the person who has been educated in mental health in general might look like him, which is why the American Psychology Association has to issue apologies for their systemic role. But let's go forward and read this as they highlight James Jackson, the black man, who cuddled so close with the white folks, married one, was married like 40 years. We could have Jack Johnsoned him. But no, we won't Jack Johnson him, just like they didn't pardon Jack Johnson. We should place less emphasis on whether black men are resistant to therapy, said Stevenson, and more on understanding the context in which they already feel comfortable talking about their feelings and traumas. If a black man is able to find a treatment that is culturally responsive, that he understands, and that embraces the uniqueness of his difference, he is more likely to use that service. There is a long way to go toward making such mental health care universal, Stevenson and others say, but psychologists are crafting several promising interventions that address issues that black men face. Besides adaptations of individual therapy, these include community programs in barbershops and other local venues, outreach through technology and social media, and national networks devoted to facilitating black men's mental health and well-being. The more that systems, programs, and providers find culturally relevant ways to foster black men's mental health, including directly addressing racial trauma and its effects, the more society will benefit, added Wisdom Powell, PhD, an associate professor of psychiatry at the University of Connecticut and director of the university's Health Disparities Institute. That's a black woman right there. You ain't even got to tell me wisdom. Wisdom spelled with a Z. That's a black woman. Stop playing. Stop playing. Don't tell me that we don't got them. I just said access. Finding access where it is. She's in Connecticut, University of Connecticut, director of the university's Health Disparities Institute. I'm not the one saying we don't got black doctors. I'm not the one saying we don't have black scientists. I'm the one actually taking some time to highlight it and contemporize it from today's lens, which means is current a publication as I can find that actually is scholarly, that highlights black mental health versus in general. It's what W.E.B. Du Bois did. It's what it's expected of black academics. I graduated from Morehouse, so okay, I'll follow. But wisdom with a Z, that's a black woman. Don't make me prove it. Interventions shouldn't be just about healing and restoring black men, though that would be enough, she said. We also need to think about how much talent we're hemorrhaging by not providing black men with the proper support. Think of all the innovators, entrepreneurs, scientists, and physicians there would be if black men weren't being killed with impunity by police officers, and if we were creating spaces for them to heal, grow, and thrive. Now, this is the part where people get thrown off by being killed by the police officers, because it is more likely to be fired for being late for 5 or 15 minutes or an hour by the same employer you work in the 1,000 hours for. You can work for them for 1,000 hours, but be fired for being late for 5 minutes. That's a bigger conundrum. That's systemic shit that we're referring to, and how that last hired, first fired, not the being killed by police officers. Although that tugs at the police strings of fear, the deeper fear that the black man may resonate with is, why the fuck do you keep going back to those jobs? If I don't go back to work, if I don't sell my labor for less than $40,000 a year or medium wages or whatever it is, if I don't sell my labor to them, then I won't be the man in my family. That's the bigger fear. Not being killed by these punk ass white boys. That shit is a deflection. Them motherfuckers I live in an open carry state. There's not enough police officers. What the fuck do you mean? They're scared for their lives. If they have to go into the hood, they are outgunned. What the fuck be wrong with people? The police officers going into predominantly black spaces are outgunned. They can call all the backup in the state. Nigga, fuck wrong with you? In predominantly black spaces, they would have to call the National Guard in order to give them the level of they can call the Marines, they can call in Navy SEALs. They call in the FBI on some investigations. Sometimes they go and arrest 20, 30, 40, 50, what they label gang members. In one arrest, they'll go get 50 people. So what the fuck do you think those 1 and 2 police officers on patrol, and then we have an issue here. They be scared for their fucking lives. Something's goofy about y'all. There are far more of us than we've afforded our police districts to be able to police. Fuck are y'all talking about? It's like, oh, the police killing people with impunity. No, being fired with impunity is the bigger fear. Never amounting to much is the bigger fear. Having your value stripped away by a low-level manager is the bigger fear. You've already accepted, okay, I need help, by going and filling out a job application in the first place. Oh, excuse me, my mind wanders. You've already accepted a certain reality by saying I need help and going to these psychology places in the first place where it might be accessible. Technology enables fewer excuses for access. You can pick up the phone and call somebody. But will you be able to speak with somebody who's been trained and educated in mental illness in general, but also has the experience or the context to be able to relate it with Black men and our experiences? If we go into this conversation thinking that the Black men are the ones that are afraid for our lives of the police, you've already missed out on a great deal of Black men that actually would need help with violence, particularly those that don't give a fuck about the police showing up. Why the fuck do you think that they're coming to write down a report? They have a they are there with a pen and a piece of paper. Unless they're enabled with technology, they're typing, and they don't even know how to type that fast. They typos, they don't know your name and shit, that the address, what is your phone number again? Who's the emergency contact and what's their number? And their records be trash, putting so much on the police officer as if they are superheroes. Like they come in and it's Clark Kent in that motherfucker. The police ain't shit in the neighborhood. Even when we see Black police officers, niggas chuckle under our breath, sometimes in their fucking face. Fuck is wrong with y'all? Oh, being killed, Black men being killed with impunity by the police officers. No, niggas be wanting the police officer 900 out of 1,000. Nigga, if you not gonna shoot me, nigga, square up then, bitch ass nigga. Let me see something. Y'all be having shit all the way fucked up. The police officers got bullied in high school or whatever, younger, and now that they got a gun and a badge and some authority, they think that that gives them the ability. Now they can yell at a nigga. And no, that still don't make you shit. The idea going in that the Black man felt like he was inferior to the police officer, that is wrong. It be some fear. There are a few officers in the hood that niggas ain't playing like that. Niggas ain't playing with none of them officers. I ain't gonna lie to you. There are a few officers on any given workforce that niggas ain't going. They ain't playing with them like that. Hey, Tanjan, how you doing? But there's only a few. Because niggas know when that officer is to be played with or not. But the narrative that, oh, we just think that police officers are in the neighborhood and they're just killing Black people indiscriminately, and that's why we need help in America because we fear being the next George Floyd or Michael Brown. No, nigga. It doesn't really work like that. It only works like that if them bitch ass officers are not willing. Oh, I gotta hit them lips again. See, I got people in my chat. See, y'all ain't playing with me. I got a homeboy who said it, man. You know, nigga, I always wondered this shit. Like, I thought it was a Southern thing. Like, damn, these niggas put on like lip gloss and shit, like a lot. Like, I seen niggas walking around with that shit, and it was just one of those things that you observe and don't really think nothing of it. You move in, like when I went to Atlanta, you move into certain spaces and the mannerisms that the men adopt. There are some cities that I've gone to, even some Southern cities. Like you can go like a different part of the town and it's different, of course, but the mannerisms of the men are just different. I went to Atlanta and I thought that a lot of those dudes were kind of feminine. And I mean, I was in West Side, Bankhead. Nigga, I was there with the crackheads, so I got the full round experience. Don't let it think that there wasn't no gangsters and all of that other shit there. But no, the mannerisms seemed a lot more accommodating. The Southern hospitality type of way of thinking about life, if a colloquial way of thinking about it can come forth, there were people who just like, hi, hello, like shit that niggas don't say. Like niggas would be like, what's up with it? But hi, like to fix your motherfucking mouth to tell me hi and hello, like shit like that. I was like, man, I'm from Cali, man. We kind of laid back and cool and shit, but when you observe the mannerisms and shit, verse going to somewhere like New York, where them motherfuckers are not hi, hello type people. When I was in New York, I did not get that type of experience in dealing with people. It was just a little different. It wasn't no hi. It wasn't no hello. It was more like fuck you won't. It was different. I'm just saying the different mannerisms and such. Expectations that there is a monogamous standard or that there was a way that you can deal with all of them because you took some courses. I'm very, very against that. But I am for creating that greater degree of access to where when they do say, I actually do need help with the way that I'm processing this shit, I'm the one who actually initiates the next behaviors. I'm responding a certain way. When Black men are willing to raise their hands and say, I am the one who needs help with something, I want them to be able to find help that works for them. Now, there are some who would say, I tried and it didn't work, where there are others who can say, I tried and the particular treatment modality that worked for me was. And so in that case, we're not making it one of those things where we're recommending everybody gets, oh, you just need to go get some help. Because what you would be essentially saying is, Jonathan Majors, go get you a white girl to talk to. But I don't think they fucking hear me. They would just as easily be telling us to go nest in the arms of a white woman by saying go get some help if they don't understand where the statistics are. Who would that nigga be going to get help from? And how is that help going to be packaged for him? I'm looking at the screen the way y'all should see it. And to me, I don't know if you can read it, but it still looked like that font is not given over 40 club. It still looked like they got that font for them young motherfuckers, don't it? Like, golly, why they got to put the font for motherfuckers that's, the 21 and 23 years old? You could tell they put that font for somebody that was 23 years old. Come on with that bullshit so we can actually read the statistics and realities. Let's get back into it. I rant, I go on one. All right. Let's look at it. Statistics, realities. While Black Americans experience similar rates of mental illness as other Americans in general, there are contextual differences. For example, Black adults living below the poverty line are more than twice as likely to report serious psychological distress as U.S. adults who enjoy greater financial security, according to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Offices of Minority Health. As another example, depressive symptoms among Black people are more disabling, persistent, and treatment resistant than they are among white people. Bailey R.K. et al., Neuropsychiatric Disease and Treatment, Volume 15, 2019. It goes on to say, and Black men are not receiving the help they need for these problems. For example, only 26% of Black and Hispanic men ages 18 to 44 who experience daily feelings of anxiety or depression were likely to have used mental health services, compared with 45% of non-Hispanic white men with the same feelings. Data comes from NCHS, data brief number 206, 2015. When Black men do seek help and would prefer a same-race provider, it can be difficult finding Black psychologists since they make up only about 4% of the doctoral level psychology workforce, though that number is growing according to 2018 APA Center for Workforce Studies data. About 4% of the doctoral level psychology workforce once again. At the same time, Black men's mental health is more complex than statistics or clinical diagnosis indicate, according to subject matter experts. Because of structural racism and Black men's unique history in the country, their mental health and treatment are intimately tied to factors such as implicit bias on the part of medical providers, high poverty rates, and low access to quality psychological and psychiatric services. Compared with white people, for example, Black people are less likely to receive guideline consistent care or to be inclined or to be included in mental health research. This is why we started with James Jackson. They are also more likely to use emergency rooms or primary care for mental health problems because they have not received appropriate preventive services. For a summary of these findings, see the American Psychiatric Association's fact sheet on mental health disparities among African Americans at psychology.org. I could bring that one up, which has all the facts on their fact sheet. I mean, and this is their department. Who else in the world or in America would you deem a higher authority on psychiatry? If you find one, let me know and we can examine them other than the Psychiatry Association. Let's keep going though. Given such factors, it is not surprising that many Black men also harbor feelings of mistrust towards medical and mental health systems, Powell added. For instance, in a study reported in Behavioral Medicine, Volume 42, Number 3, 2016, Powell and colleagues found that everyday and perceived racism, along with internalized masculinity norms, influence Black men's reluctance to seek medical help, i.e., the Black man saying, I don't want them to tell me that I'm the problem. I don't want them to tell me that I need to do something about my anger or my anger management, that I shouldn't be the one issuing threats. I'll issue the threats to whoever the fuck I want to issue. If I feel like I'll whoop a nigga ass, I'll tell him, motherfucker, I'll whoop a nigga ass. Okay. All right. Those behavioral trends are aiming Black folks entirely into a system that Black folks are complaining we don't want Black folks to go into. That's the prison system. But if you want to keep being the nigga that says, I'll whoop a nigga ass and tell a motherfucker I'll whoop their ass, that's on you. A history of racism within psychology and psychiatry always or likewise plays a role, she said. For example, in 1851, physician Samuel A. Cartwright floated the idea of drapetomania, an uncontrollable or insane impulsion to wander, among enslaved people who expressed a desire for freedom. In a similar vein, as racial protests began heating up in the 1960s, diagnosis of schizophrenia among Black men became far more common, a phenomenon highlighted by psychiatrist Jonathan M. Metz, MD, in the book The Protest Psychosis. The Protest Psychosis. Let's put a pin right there. As they were using psychiatry against niggas in 1851, this idea of drapetomania with D and then rapetomania in part of it, saying that niggas or these enslaved people, they would have an uncontrollable, insane impulse to just wander around if we don't keep them enslaved, which is the line of thought, that line keep going in psychiatry until the 60s, that says they want freedom as a matter of schizophrenia. They are protesting because they're insane. If freedom to them looks like the ability to just do nothing as a form of psychosis. It's that undergirds of the lazy Negro. If he wasn't a slave, he would do nothing. He would just wander around aimlessly. And thus, the Black man must be forced into some form of daily labor, or his idle hands would drive him batshit crazy. All right, let's keep going now. Black men today might not know that specific history, said Powell, but it lives in their spirit a little bit. And it gets transmuted into practices like withdrawing from systems, having a mistrust of systems, and feeling like systems don't have your best interest at heart. Building blocks for interventions. Culturally competent treatments for Black men take these realities into account and, as such, share certain ingredients, say psychologists involved in this work. These include, and look at the first one, addressing the masculine norms. Black men are even more likely than white men to endorse aspects of traditional masculine ideology, such as the need to act tough and in control and to avoid emotional expression, research finds. According to Baron K. Rogers, a psychology doctoral student at the University of Akron in Ohio, that is because they have additional reasons behind those of white men to assume these stances, namely to stave off societal pressures and oppression. He said, the idea that racial factors insurrect. No, let me stop right there. When a nigga say he'll beat a nigga ass, sometimes a nigga do mean he'll beat a nigga ass. How about that? All right, now let me get back into it. The idea that racial factors intersect with unhealthy masculinity norms is also highlighted in the book Cool Pose, The Dilemmas of Black Manhood in America by Touchstone, 1993, written by psychologist Richard Majors, PhD, and sociologist Janet Mancini-Bilson, PhD. They argued that poor urban Black men sometimes assume a stance of aloof swagger to defend against the harsh realities and racism they encounter in daily life, which wears away at their physical and mental health. In fact, such internalized views of masculinity make a lot of Black men resistant to therapy and more likely to seek informal ways of addressing their mental health through barbershops, church, religion, or talking to family members, said psychologist Erlanger Earl Turner, PhD and assistant professor at Pepperdine University in LA. So when a Black man does enter therapy, it's important to tread lightly as he starts to open up and share his emotions, he said, because if you push to discuss emotions too soon and he isn't ready, he may decide not to return. Turner's podcast, The Breakdown with Dr. Earl, destigmatizes mental health treatment for Black men and boys in an engaging manner using a psychological science focus. Jessica L. Jackson, PhD, a counseling psychologist in Houston and global diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging care lead at the mental health tech firm Modern Health, has done some of this work with Black men in settings including the VA, Greater Los Angeles Healthcare System, the Harris Healthcare System, Texas, and in private practice. To help these men identify and become more comfortable with their emotions, she uses a tool called the Feelings Wheel, which labels the spectrum of emotions from the most basic to the most nuanced. When Black men start to gain a more extensive emotional vocabulary, it provides fuel for the next stages of therapeutic work, addressing past traumas and learning how to communicate more effectively in relationships, Jackson said. She knows they are making progress when they start to bring what they have learned home. For example, when they begin communicating with their partners about their feelings instead of brooding or responding with anger. I want to put a pin right there. The fact that you had to beat a nigga ass may be the very trauma that you use as a Black man to justify when you feel like you can just beat a nigga ass today. And you never got over the fact that you won a good fight that you never should have had to fight in the first place. And you are resolved today with the idea that beating the nigga ass is what you might have to do. Every once in a while, you might have to put your hands on somebody because of the unaddressed trauma that you felt, most likely being a child who had to enact violence out of self-defense. Now, yes, there are some young kids who America wants to criminalize the behaviors of when they act out and put their hands on some other person, being a kid or being an adult. But this cycle of justifying adults who put their hands on other people's kids, I know from a certain lens, it seems like straightforward. But in American society, we vote and we pay for the police and oftentimes whatever authority is in the classroom to take disciplinary measures against our children. We vote for the police to have that authority. Them taking a life is less about them killing the person, and it's more about what they write down in that person's record and how young they start getting that jacket or putting that coat on. And the systemic issue is being able to see white folks and looking at those reports. How do the police officers, how do the teachers write their evaluations or their reports, their records, when dealing with the behaviors of Black citizens versus how they write their reports on dealing with white citizens? And they want Black folks to just get more comfortable going and putting in the report, but they have yet to show us that they've gotten any better with keeping an accurate record. And when white folks are writing down the record of their interactions with Black women and children, the victim narrative that they would write down and its perpetrator record as they would write down are both still reflective of proximity and access, the Black man. And you're telling me that if the Black man is being told to go get help, that it should be him opening up about what he's gone through. You know, things that lead to the anger. Well, I am angry because, and now he needs to talk about it because him saying I am angry and being angry are human. Him using the disciplinary actions of physical violence, those are human. And how he exercises those, if it ends up with him going to jail, or the woman ends up in the hospital, the child ends up in the hospital, he done disciplined his child to the hospital, he done disciplined his wife or his woman into the hospital, and they had to file that report, I'm a little bit skeptical, not a little bit, a whole lot of bit skeptical that they are writing down the record similar ways as they would write it down when experiencing white crime. And while they say there are very few Black men even willing to go and have this conversation, I would beg to differ. They have plenty of records to go off of where Black men were actually screaming for help. They have plenty of records. I would argue that it was written down by the steward or the secretary or the clerk of, they had their title, whatever they were, and their role, and they were like, that is not my job. And so the people who were in charge of said record being created are the ones responsible for the systemic inequality. The hospitals that were not hiring Black psych are the reason why there's fewer records for those folks in that community. The hospital has its, its operating costs, it has its head count. For them to say, would it be equitable for us to buy Black talent for our community, Black talent geared at mental health? Would it be equitable or profitable, excuse me, actually monetarily beneficial to pay someone $250,000 a year to listen to Black men cry about their issues? Would that be beneficial to the community for the hospital system to pay to pay for that Black talent? And what they're saying is, well, there's spaces even where they have a good population of Black folks, but the Black folks themselves are not being the consumer of help. Now they can put it in an app, they can put it online, and you can Google it, and that access is 100% across the board. But what they're referring to then is, once you've hit that button and identified that you want help, where the system is struggling is being able to match the Black man with the preference for treatment that he would be willing to receive, i.e., if a Black man is willing to talk to a Black man in the healthcare or the mental health care space. And why would he feel like that's important? Because in America, it's still used against you. They don't give a fuck about no patient private. If you go get help, that's one of the first things that society says, oh, he was getting help for mental health. They use it against you in the American society. You would think that America was a place that promotes goodness. If they thought that getting help with mental health was a good thing, then they wouldn't make it a thing for investigative reporters to find out if a bad incident happened. Let's check and find out if the person was getting help with mental health. And finally, in America, why in the fuck is it so easy for them to get the answer, yes, they were getting help with their mental health? It's because there is no doctor-patient privacy clause that is being respected. That doesn't exist. Black men are in their very right mind to assume that that information being written down by careless, unconcerning, untrained white people in the medical field is and will likely be used against them in their real life. That's the threat, not the police officer putting a bullet in them. When the person says, I need help, it's often because that bullet to them would be a blessing to their family. Excuse me for being real on Cabrini Thursdays. Why don't the nigga go get help? Because he doesn't want it used against him. If he's the one that was responsible for the injuries to the child, him going to get help and talk about it is writing down a record of admission of guilt for a crime he committed against not just humanity, but flesh of his flesh, blood of his blood. Why would he want to report that he is the one causing physical harm to his loved ones? See, what the statistics say, if it's not him getting help, then it must be his victims. Excuse me. Let me get back into this because, like I said, I'm from that tribe of long winds. You walk in talking about a feelings wheel to some Black men after they done caught bodies, and you're trying to get him to reconnect with society, and you have a feelings wheel. Let's talk about your feelings. What feeling do you feel? And when we look at this feeling, it leads towards a core. Yeah, that shit may not be as effective with some niggas, is what I'm trying to say. That shit might not work with a New York nigga. It might work with an Atlanta Negro who puts on the extra lip gloss faithfully, but it may not work with a New York nigga. A nigga who wants to not be verbally abusive to his family seeking care may be more receptive of the care than the nigga who is actually guilty of verbal assault, verbal abuse. And if you can't help attract the nigga who's verbally abusive, Yeah, it might prove very challenging to get the nigga who's actually out there catching bodies to admit that he's wrong. But let's keep going. When Black men start to gain a more extensive emotional vocabulary, it provides fuel for the next stages of therapeutic work, like addressing those past traumas and learning how to communicate more effectively in relationships. Oh, no, I don't got to talk to them like that. I don't, what? Yeah, you don't have to talk bad about anyone. That is a choice. And yes, being cruel, being mean, not being courteous, that is all within your rights. You can be 100% a piece of shit to everyone with a bullhorn standing on the side of the street, read and just yelling at the top of your lungs to people. That's a choice. That's a character that you choose to put on with a full voice. It's not your everyday, all day voice like a Hebrew Israelite. When you get mad and choose to go to the I'm mad voice, I want them to know that I'm mad voice. That expression of your masculinity is funny as hell to some man. What the fuck is you puffing your chest up like that for? The bigger the motherfucking chest, the easier to kill for the hunter. Why is you making your chest that big? You already 6 foot something with the biggest chest in. You're like you're two, damn near 300 pounds of a Negro. You don't have to yell, but you get a bullhorn anyway. You stand on the side of the street and yell, and this is giving you some type of energy. It's giving you value in the world. Therapy might help, or it might not, because there are some men that shit ain't gonna work. A feelings wheel. Okay, let me get back on it. Relationships. She knows they are making progress when they start to bring what they have learned home. For example, when they begin communicating with their partners about their feelings instead of brooding or responding with anger. It's like they're getting unstuck, she said. Now this one from Penn State. That means making space for clients to identify racist incidents that they have experienced, excuse me, and the feelings that arise because of them, and more important, to understand and work toward overcoming internalized racism. The many facets of internalized racism include believing negative racial stereotypes, right? Because they can or they may not have the stereotype. The white person may or may not have them. That's still for the white man. When you believe that shit is when you're the one who has the issue. When you believe in white supremacy, that there are actual white people who are far more supreme than you, and these white people and all of that shit, and white folks got it good and all it. When you believe that shit, that in America, the white man, he just got you licked and there's nothing that you can do, that's when you need the help. Oh, no, there's just too much that points out that the white man, yeah, that's why the black man needs help with that. The white man can believe whatever the fuck they want. If the white man believes that they are supreme, if the white man believes that they are inferior, thus they need to adopt, violence. They need to be in roles of authority. They need to be in roles of decision making and shit. Like, if that's their issue, that's their issue. What they adopt is their issue. What we adopt is our issue on that individual regard towards stereotypes. Cultural values while undermining one's own and denying that racism exists, Rogers explained. For white psychologists to work effectively with black male clients, it is imperative that they develop a deeper understanding of racism and its impacts by keeping abreast of the latest scholarship, taking continuing education classes, and getting training in the area. In fact, for license renewal, several state licensing boards specifically require courses in cultural diversity. White clinicians should also become familiar with the APA guidelines on race and ethnicity in psychology, approved by the APA Council of Representatives in 2019, among other points. So you're telling me that it's a part of their licensing that they should and understand the cultural diversity perspectives. So when I show you that curriculum that's going forth is rested and nested in a black man who married a white woman, and it don't get no easier, then we should know what we're up against when we're the ones saying, yeah, I think that there are some treatment modalities that could be effective for black men, but it will be up to that individual black man and his comfort level, his tolerance on what he can go and benefit from, where he can tolerate the white thought on black lives, and how much he can tolerate the standards of psychological, all of this psychological shit that they want to, when you're analyzing oneself or analyzing the conditions and separating it, what's the evidence to support the, all of the, if there are those folks going forward and saying, yes, I can have black male clients, nigga, better talk to James Jackson about that shit, them Jackson them. In addition, I'm back on. Therapists should be aware that issues of racism and masculinity can intersect in complicated ways, added Rogers, who is working on a scale to a Naker scale, to identify and understand how and when these domains overlap, the domains of racism and masculinity. That scale, which has now been tested on some 600 black men, explores what he calls racist gender role strain. The idea that if you endorse specific views of manhood but cannot meet them, it creates internal conflict and stress. Yeah, you can beat a nigga ass, but that's not going to win the battle or the fight, never the war. Your physical violence being your number one tool that you feel you can flex on somebody in the world doesn't work in a world of bullets. So it renders that nigga who can finally say, oh, I got a gun too, white boy, is obsolete as the white boy was when he tried to flex the gun. Flexing that gun and not using it, it only creates an enduring fear. Nigga, you ain't shit. Walk around in open carry states like Arizona or Texas, and it helps you realize that that gun ain't shit. You ain't using the motherfucker. What you got it for? You got all this power and authority. I could kill a motherfucker right now, and that motherfucker is driving you absolute batshit crazy. It wasn't working for the white men who said that they had authority, and now they got a license to kill a motherfucker, and now they in the neighborhoods patrolling and shit and doing all that they can, and they don't got one single body. All of that violent shit built up and being defined as a part of your manhood, prison, that shit might help you with it. You can go in there, and if that's where it works, then yeah, they got a space for you. But outside of that, athleisure. Nigga, take your ass to the court. Nigga, go throw some elbows on the hoop court. But you ain't whooping ass in America. You're just not. Not your wife. And there are many people who are moving on this lines of, damn, you better watch how you whoop your kids. Watch how you whoop your kids. There are some niggas who will never let that go and may always be willing to go to jail over their right to use physical violence against their kids, up and including the hospitalization records. And they still won't want to talk about that. They feel like they can beat their kid, they could break a bone, they could do whatever it is, and the rest of the world, taxpayers, we're supposed to just, no, whatever it costs, I'm gonna put the cast on him, and the doctor should see him. But the doctor shouldn't talk to the husband or the father who was so violent with the child. Nah, I'm gonna whoop the child like I see fit. Nigga, if you beat your child into the hospital, therapy. You think you can put your wife into the hospital, therapy. These niggas that just advocate and propose putting hands on women that ain't even their wives. Like again, I'm picking on them this week. I might let it go. Maybe next week I'll pick on them a little bit more. Hebrew Israelites. That's your third, fourth girlfriend. Therapy. Nigga, it's not working out, bruh. You know, I got 7 wives to deal with. Therapy. Nigga, you just keep reiterating that shit like they got something else. Like there has to be some form of treatment modality that might work. It might not be this little magic wheel where you talk about your emotions. But there got to be something for these niggas. There got to be something. Let me get back into it. Black men may internalize ideas that should be good protectors, providers, or role models. That seems like a pretty good thing. For example, some Black men may internalize ideas that they should be good protectors, providers, or role models. But, Rogers said, if you're in a system that oppresses you or makes you internalize these beliefs, but doesn't give you access to fulfilling them, it causes stress and frustration. You just can't be a good husband. Can't be a good husband. Can't get right. Can't be a good provider. There's nothing that you can, there's always more that you can be doing. There's insatiable things that you can do as a provider. You'll never be good enough. You should be a role model, meaning that you have to be somebody that's worthy of emulating. If you have faults and if you have habits and vices that you're not living up to a role model mentality, that can create some stress and frustration. In a general sense, encouraging clients to talk about racism opens the door to more fulfilling therapy overall, Turner added. It allows clients to feel that they can talk about anything in this room, he said. For me, that's a really important piece about having this conversation. Uh-oh. Addressing within group differences. How am I looking on time? Because I've been going for a little minute. I don't want to take up the whole morning. Now it's only 10:17. Now I wasn't making the Naker scale, Queen Cascade. That's what the psychologist is doing. I just said I'll get to the most recent information, see what they're doing. I'll bring it out live. I didn't say I'll bring it out live, but I'm bringing it out live while I'm here with us, and we having this conversation. It say 6. Okay, there's 6 rocking with me. That's cool. I'm with the shit. All right. They got a whole Naker scale in psychology coming out in 2024. It sound like. But let's get to this next section, addressing within group differences. And this is where we start finding our Black Republican progressives, why they date white in the first place. And hopefully we can get to some real conversation about the in-group differences that Black folks seem to want to talk about, but they don't want to allow the academic growth of, which would be by volunteering for research. Like where all of us, I think, is the research for veterans. All of us is the research for veterans, I believe. Yeah, but there is research. There's research, and men can go get help, but there's still also institutions, as we pointed out, some Connecticut's and the other ones, Philadelphia, that want Black people to participate in the research part. What do you even think about the mental health and the services, treatment modalities, their efficacy? What do you even think about those? There's still research that's available just to have the conversations with Black singles, Black adults, 18 to age 44. Will they only use what they get from the media and looking at Chicago and when they say Atlanta, like Cleveland in Atlanta, Cleveland Drive in Atlanta, West Side Bankhead, Atlanta, you know what I'm saying? Other parts of the Black community where they look at the access to, the mental health services, and they would look at it with less acceptance, or they would look at it as, almost disdain, like, nigga, that's snitching. I'm not going to go talk to them white people about nothing. It could help because they have those stark contrasts that deal with class. Let me let them say it in their words, and then I'm going to continue with the conversation. No, working in culture, and this read was only supposed to have been about 16 minutes of a read, but I digress. Addressing within group differences. Working in culturally responsive ways with Black men also means understanding individual differences in terms of socioeconomic status, age, education, U.S., region, country of origin, belief systems, level of acculturation. That's the big one right there. How much do you love white folk? How much do you defend whiteness and praise whiteness and validate the experiences of white men while at the same time feeling disgusted by the experiences of black men? How much can you tolerate when it comes to the creative genius of people in general, through film and through their narratives, through their just their voice, basically what they're saying? Sexual orientation, and more, Turner said. On a broad scale, it is helpful to recognize that Black men born in the United States probably incorporate some version of both African American cultural values, which emphasize the importance of extended family networks, interdependence with groups and relationships, spirituality, and flexible notions of time, for example, and Eurocentric values, which emphasize individuality, nuclear family structure, and competitiveness, Turner noted. It is also important to understand the complex issues of intersectionality that Black, gay, transsexual, and bisexual men face, said Lisa Boleg, PhD, a professor of applied social psychology at the GWU, George Washington University in Washington, D.C. Her research shows that gay Black men often experience racial discrimination from gay men who are not Black, for example, while bisexual Black men experience race and sexual orientation discrimination in both gay and heterosexual communities. Sex Roles, Volume. Any effective mental health programs need to work with these men holistically and intersectionally, she said. She also recommends focusing on these men's strengths and assets because many of their problems arise from external factors, not internal ones, and holding therapy groups specific to the sexual orientation and race of the men served. Right. I would find it more challenging to have a mental health therapy group session where the focus is the gay Black men's experience and their commonalities in dating. I would find those mental health 1 hour therapy sessions a bit more challenging than I would if it was, married men coming together having our conversations around what can we do to be better men in the lives of our wives and children. The heterosexual, all of the transsexual, while they may say I've experienced and then have behavioral conversations about the behaviors and different things that happened, my comfort levels inside of their treatment modality, whatever it is, group session, I think that would be a more challenge for me. And that's coming from me, a Morehouse grad, where I've been able to walk in those spaces and get educated, be in the same classrooms, we eat together, we compete together, we strive together, we overcome the test, whatever it was. But that wasn't, trying to recognize what I need to do as an individual to be a better man to men, if that makes sense. And then being a better men to white men. In fact, going into a mental health support services environment, the patient would be asked, what is your focus? What services are you looking to actually benefit from? i.e., what areas in your life are you actually looking to get help with? And so while the gay men may be able to benefit from married Black men having conversations around what we can do for self-improvement wise and dealing with those issues, they may have a lesser, it may be less energy for them to assimilate into the marriage counseling group for men's mental health than it would be for me, is what I'm saying. Likewise, I would look at the spaces such as the schools where the Bible is taught, the churches that they're referring to, or the schools, as spaces where Black men were most welcome to come in and try to build and grow some of the good character on the inside. And we also know that that hasn't been the best outcome either, because it takes spirituality and makes it a precedent for being the corrector of secular behavioral choices. It takes God's holistic view of authority and anoints men with a certain level of privilege that will not allow them to autocorrect when they're wrong. Having adopted Jesus Christ as their brother and only God the Father being able to judge them, then their treatment of other humans is not for examination. Because they are allowed to go into the mental, because the patient, the Black man, is allowed to go into the mental health program and design a program in partnership with the providers of mental health services there, that partnership would allow the gay man to be able to go to the space where I'm at. And me, I would see that their space, I would reserve their right to be in their space. Where we start having deeper challenges is that not only am I not gay, so those programs that would seem, geared towards their issues, but I'm expected as the Black man to assume and accept that the mental health program that is working for them gay Black men, that same provider is going to take my shit serious. And where the group dynamic ends up making it more challenging for me is that you're only going to get that hour, and now you're back to the world. You're outside of your protected circle. If it was a 2-hour group, then 2 hours. And so the time you spend focusing on these gay issues is time where my brain is like, what about me? While that man wants an aggressive man to love him, I'm trying to bring out that in me that is the strength that my wife, a woman, is already in love with. And I want to do less of the things that make my wife uncomfortable and more of the things that my wife says I appreciate. That's why I was in the course. The distraction is what make it a challenge for me, because not only would I say something like, damn, are we even here for the same thing? And they might say, yeah, we're here to improve ourselves. We're here to make our intimate relationships and our intimate partners, value. We're here to help recognize the value that exists between us and our relationship. They may feel like it's not a stretch for them to be in the same space. And that's a me problem. See, I would go in there, and if it's a gay provider trying to tell me how to have a better relationship with my wife, that is one of those distractions that I would say, well, systemically, I would have to disagree. He might be better at helping the gay people than he could ever be at recognizing what it is that I'm going through. I am the man that has to swallow the violent tendencies that I would naturally want to flex to. I want to say, look, if you ain't going to whoop my ass, then what is we talking about? If it is not going towards violence, then the rest of that shit seems to be small talk, and I don't want to hear the crying. Now, again, from the idea of whether or not a heterosexual man would be able to receive the fullness of the benefits of anyone that's not Moses, that's on them. But just to that regard, I'm a veteran. My dad is a veteran. We go back generations of men who actually decided to serve. There are some who did not take that American accommodationist approach as Black men in America. It wasn't their duty to be a part of the broader community bigger than just what you can do for your individual family. It wasn't about competing against your individual American neighbor, but that our country could compete against those other ones. And when we became a more liberal society, then we became accepting of those folks who otherwise we would have been competing against. If my sergeant would have told me, aim that way and pull a trigger, I would have thought that some of them would have been enemies of America, because they were my enemy as a soldier in the army. But that same person has the freedom in America to become a mental health program provider and help people. I'm going to ask it, it's a bit rhetorical, tongue in cheek, how distracting it would be to have a fucking Pakistani or a damn Afghani doing mental health services at the VA. I'm just going to ask you that. And I'm going to just put it out there for what it is, and the rest of society can take it for what it's worth. How distracting, I'm going to say. They can read from all the smart people books they want, but at the very least, might it be distracting if he has the whole shit on his head? Might it be distracting in an open carry state to have a group and the group be led by a Middle Easterner? I'm just saying that's the same way that I feel. For a group that is dealing with veterans with PTSD to raise their hand and say, yes, I'm struggling with mental health and it's impacting my family, and then they go to the VA to get services, how distracting would it be to see the motherfucking head wrap? Not on a woman, but on a man. And now he's here to talk to you about the PTSD that you may have experienced related to your war experience. And he's going to talk to you. I'm just saying it might be distracting. Having a white woman would not be distracting if the black man is not attracted to her. And thus, if you have a system of mental health that is still propagated by a whole lot of white people, and then saying, well, black people aren't becoming clients. When black people go get mental health, they're the racist ones. They're the ones who keep asking for black people. It's only 4% of the workforce. They're not getting help because 4% of the psychiatry workforce is black. They don't want to talk to white people about it. They keep talking about microaggressions and white people. Right? You feel what I'm saying here? And I'm just saying it might be a bit distracting for a black man to go inside the room, and once you finally raised your hand and said, I need help with something, the first thing you see is a white man. But y'all finna talk about racism in America and how it impacts you and makes when you run in and you have real experiences with the system. And now a white man is finna listen to your problems and say, you know what, here's what you need to do to get right. And okay, not the white man, the white woman. Again, if you're not attracted to the white woman, then it's not an issue. But what if it, kind of, it's not easy with you. You know what I'm saying? You're not against white women, but you are very for black women. And you're seeing that there's the black woman and then there's this white woman. And you see how the black woman is being painted and depicted in America, and then you're seeing this white woman. And then, all the things, those undergirds, undertones of why in the fuck does America want to, and others, it's not just America, there's places in Europe that also like to paint black in an ugly face, the behaviors that happen from all humans. But, our media here seems to make it seem like it's the black woman. And so what happens if you feel very strongly about the black woman? How in the fuck is that white woman, and she's sitting there in all of her whiteness, going to make the therapy experience easier? So I'm just saying there's different treatment modalities, different ways to which people are able to receive the information. At times, there will be things that allow that therapy session or that treatment to be easier received. And there's times where black people are being called resistant to the therapy that's being available. They say that there is therapy available, but black people are the ones who are resistant to it. I show you that there's a black man who's being praised as he died, but he's being praised for his white accommodist positions at all times and in everything that he did, including marriage. He has the rewards and accolades to show it. He is their guy in psychology, the same way when we throw back to historical black activists, people say W.B. Du Bois, Martin Luther King Jr. It's this affinity towards whiteness that the standard or the median of black men are rejecting. We're not marrying white women. Said in short, you tell a black man to go get help is telling him to go partner with white women. And it's only the white woman because by diversity and inclusion, the white man had to hire somebody. And if he's not hiring Middle Easterners to do these conversations with us, then who the hell is it? The Asian woman? She's going to tell the black man what he should do about race problems in America, the Asian woman? There are, I'm right here, we almost threw this thing. Sorry, those who grew up in predominantly black cultures, for example, are less likely to view themselves as inferior because they have not been exposed to historical racism in their home country. Hence, their cultural identity may serve as a buffer, he noted. Many folks coming from continental Africa, they say, when they get to America, they feel like it's a great capitalist country. You have all the opportunity in the world. You can do what you need to do. We are not inferior to anyone. And they seem to tote that when they're able to get to America. They tote that like a tote bag. I am not inferior. I am not inferior. These white Americans, I do very well among any person in the world, not just among white American or European. Like they really hold that in true regard. Whereas there are some even pro-black spaces where their message is a constant bombardment of white supremacy in all things, everything, and finding a balance with that. All right. There are many of the other cultural differences among these groups as well. For example, Jamaicans often identify themselves first as Jamaican and tend to frame mental, psychological, and psychiatric issues as medical or spiritual conditions that need interventions from spiritual healers such as shamans, said Turner, who discusses these topics in his book, Mental Health Among African Americans, Innovations in Research and Practice, Lexington Books, 2019. As a mental health practitioner, you should be aware of these different cultural and spiritual values, he said, but you should also avoid overgeneralizing this information. Incorporating group work. Yeah, I beat the Jamaicans up. That fat fucking Jamaican. They got a swagger about themselves. And if I really had to tell the truth, I say fat Jamaicans, but in my life, I don't think I've ever met a Jamaican I did not like, to be honest. The motherfuckers, it's not just like, the swagger about themselves, but there is something admirable about, the success levels that I've seen in my own personal relationships with the Jamaican men. And I've just seen Jamaican women, like, I don't know what it was, like her shop it just hit different. And there are others that had been in, okay, so let's do it this way. When you're walking into a building, your experience can be hit by all of the different senses, sight, smell, and so many other things. And when you go into certain spaces, they have their traditional they have their traditional where you can walk in and you see their colors, you see their flags, you can smell, just based off what it is. And it's not just like a barber shop or a salon anymore, because it started to embody some of what they've put in it. They've put their own touch there. You go to some barbershops, they'll have an entire rack of like face grooming kits and things. In black businesses, you can buy this. Some, as you walk in, you'll see the cards and you'll see the black real estate people and you'll see the black, car sales, black towing, black whatever it is. You can go and get the repository, almost like the church announcements. When you walk into some churches, they have a billboard and they have all the different things from black folks that you can tap into and access, that you can leverage. We're not seeing much psychiatric services that are available. There are some adjacency type things that we can observe, though, like relationship related events, dating type of venues that are happening. I mean, there's speed dating type options and shit. There's a lot. When I walked into the Jamaican woman's space, while she did have her own cultural influences all inside of this space, the I don't know, like I would have thought I want to be racist, like against my this is the in group part. So okay, I could be a little bit racist here. I would have thought that it would have been more culturally expressive of Jamaica than some type of, like if she wanted to franchise her shit. That's the way that it looked. Like I don't know how to say it, and I could probably bring up a picture. I wonder is there wait, then I would that would assume that I knew the name of even her name, first of all. Maybe they are possessive like that. I don't know if I've ever met Paul's wife. Well, I know I've met her, but actually like greeted with the hi, my name is that man's wife. Although I've known for years that she had successful business ventures and I'd seen the business ventures. And sorry, when I say Paul's was this big fat Jamaican in my neighborhood in Del Paso Heights. He was the fat Jamaican who everybody's family know, and you can find him with his faults and you can find him with his goodness. He was one of those guys with, the big heart, love, but he was also a businessman. Some people felt like in the community he added more values. Others hated on that nigga like to the T, like they tried to steal from him and shit. Some people didn't like his prices, which is often the thing that people like to hassle on. Big fat Jamaican, and he got all the new trending wear. I mean, he used to have a shit like FUBU and Fat Farm, Sean John, all type of shit. He put us on to different fashion from the East Coast and otherwise that in our neighborhoods we wouldn't have known. That was Fat Paul, and how he kept his store. It seemed cluttered. Like there was racks inside the center where you could walk through, but you could barely get through. If you had a wheelchair, you definitely weren't able to access his space, and it just seemed like cluttered. He had big images on the wall of like hip hop and R&B things that were very accommodating to, black experience. And so the contrast would have been the cultural nuances that were present in his wife's shop, which were more like the color orange and its different variations of oranges and like orange and kind of reddish, and then there was like some green, but those like color schematics built in and coherent versus her husband's very cluttered shop, which was more like Americanized, one would say. But if you wanted a culturally connected salon shop, the wife was the one. And the husband was like, man, these motherfuckers, put these clothes in here. All they looking for is the sizes, the subtle things that people would have looked at. Other than that, you're just walking into an open space, and an open space is then, stacked with product and merchandise. But their own cultural nuances towards Jamaica, Paul's Paul was willing to play like the music of the streets, the hood, whatever it was, mixtapes, local artists and everything. But if you went into the to the salon part, where it just had a different ambiance. But never really met a I talk shit about Jamaicans, but to be actually honest, like full transparency, I don't think I've ever met one like there. I've met some like island Caribbean folks, and I can see like if you've had a bad experience with them being pushy or having a way with how they treat people, like a certain arrogance. But yeah, I'm not intimidated by such. If people are in owners and shit, that's a good shit, good deal, that's a good deed when they're able to do shit. But it doesn't necessarily mean we have to be jealous of them or envious or any of those things. But yeah, people used to talk shit, used to try to steal from him, do all type of little weird shit. And he was essentially the black business in the community, Paul, the Jamaican guy. So I don't know if that was too racist to say, but as the wife, him being protectorate of it, I'm grown now, but I don't really remember actually her greeting me and telling me what her name was. I think I've always known her as Paul's wife. That's crazy. Come to think of it, that we're grown now, though. Was that him being dominant, or was that me being accommodating and not saying, "Hey, what is your name?" Respectful. I don't know what that might lead to, but if there were those issues of in-group conflict, why is it that the African Americans, black folks in California, however your family got there, wherever you're from, Oklahoma, Texas, Mississippi, Louisiana, Carolina boys, Alabama folks, wherever your folks may be from, you're in California. Why are you stealing from Paul? What is it that Paul actually did to you? Was it environmental circumstances, or was it just proximity? You can steal from Paul because it's the closest store available. You can steal from Paul and then, justify it. Oh, his prices are too high. Justify it. Oh, he has insurance on these products. Justify it. Oh, I won't get caught. No, at some point, those behaviors are in the person. Why are you stealing from anyone for that matter, let alone the in group? Did Paul deserve to be stolen from, or was that an issue that was within the individual who was committing theft? Once they become adults, the getting away with stealing while they were young or rationalizing theft as adults for whatever reason, how can you steal or who can you steal from and what amounts you are willing to steal? That's still, to me, a trauma-based or psychological conversation. Being willing to steal, thinking that you can get away with it. There are some people who are scared to death. They might faint before they ever even got out the store. They are so goody two shoes or whatever. Just the idea of boosting a sweater, a hoodie, some jeans, a whole fucking outfit. They're dead. They snitch on themselves. Paul's didn't have security. It was him and his small and mom and pop's business, like, let alone to try to steal from like a Burlington coat factory. You know what I'm saying? But there are some people who would justify stealing. And when we talk to those folks, we're like, is that your separation from religion? Is that your true rebellion against, the King James? Is that what you're doing? How in the fuck are you justifying stealing? And for them, they don't think of it as a personal character thing that they're able to get help with, that one day they won't look at stealing as just being an acceptable thing. Their theft, people who steal, doesn't disgust them. For them, the person who says, hey, y'all don't need to steal that shit. Why don't you just, what I'm saying? It's $25. Your life is worth. That person is more disgusting than the people who steal. The nigga who would correct them and say, hey, you don't got to steal, bro. That's stealing shit. That shit is like beneath you. You're jeopardizing your entire family, your role, your value. You want to go to jail with them niggas in there? You want to be in prison for some stupid shit like stealing? Why would you know that they got a place for people who steal, right? And yet they would be more disgusted at people, to snitch. Like the nigga who'd be like, nah, don't steal that, man. You can work on that shit. That's a fucking sweater, bro. You don't want to give your life away over no sweater. No, I'm finna sell this sweater and get what? $30? Like, I'm finna get a whole box of these, and they can get bolder and bolder and justifying it deeper and deeper. Like, no, man, stop coddling. That's some dumbass shit. I don't care if you stole the entire box or 3 boxes right off the back of the truck before it even got into the store. If you were the one stealing it, that is a character flaw. That you had the courage to steal is not normal. And for you to get so emboldened that you're throwing shit off the back of the truck, therapy, nigga. Cabrini Thursdays. There is something wrong with you. And there are a lot of people who would still justify that shit. Oh, he only stole some sweaters. They were nah, nigga, why are you coddling that bullshit? And so the deeper issues like domestic violence, what is considered child abuse, how a man can speak to his woman, what is verbal assault or verbal abuse. These will be in our lifetime because as they've afforded them the greatest psychological, sociological minds were so married into whiteness that the Black experiences continue to be written out. We can try to fight back. We can try to be advocates for Black folks participating in the research that helps, afford our efficacy in mental health. When Black folks go to get mental health services, they are finally identifying that they are a client. And that's a good step. Black folks being a client for mental health services will then incentivize more practitioners. And until they're willing to pay people to listen to Black men cry, then that access is not granted and that research is not funded. And all we'll have is more people talking shit about Black people. And today it's being painted as the Black woman is the fault. The Black woman. You got so many Black men saying that they experience psychological trauma at the hands of the Black woman, that they want her to be the new bad guy in America rather than actually deal with the issues that they've repressed. And so that's enough right there. I thought that this dude looked damn near like spot on to Jonathan Majors. I'll show his picture one more time. I've done my due diligence by talking about the leading African American or Black psychologists that are accepted. The nigga died in 2020, but it is his works and his teachings, his mentees, his students who have picked up the reins of talking about Black American psychology in America. They banned Cynthia G, so we can't listen to her talk about the Black male pathology. Like, damn, how you gonna ban her for doing it? Okay, well, who's gonna be the next nigga who loves whiteness so much that they're willing to coddle these behaviors? I'm not. I'm not. I'm not. And so I think we've read enough. They talked about incorporating group work. They talked about outside the group. Yeah, they talked about being inclusive of the intersectionality for, you know, the gay males experience and them having their spaces. I said, that's a little bit of a distraction for me, but deeper than that, we're looking at these issues. I gave 3 quotes. To be a poor man is hard, but to be a poor race in the land of dollars is the very bottom of hardship. That was Du Bois. The power of the ballot we need in sheer self-defense as a guarantee of good faith. That's Du Bois. And then the more pertinent one, let those people who have yelled themselves purple, and you ain't even blue, black, purple, you Khoisan, you African joke, Black, you purple, you didn't yell yourself purple in the face over Jack Johnson because of his, you know, affinity for white women. Just sit down and ask themselves the question. Granted that Johnson and Miss Cameron proposed to live together, was it better for them to be legally married or not? And so we're having this conversation. We're not going to run from it. Race in America is a very prevalent conversation. There are some people who feel like it's unnecessary. Yep. And so they can have a world full of tragic mulattoes. That works for them who would love to see Black eliminated, self-destruct, or however they want to see it. I'm not one of them. And so with that, let me show you this Jonathan Majors looking dude who died, who leads as the academic in psychology, since they didn't want us listening to Cynthia G talk shit about niggas. And this nigga is the actual nigga training people who on the Black American family life in Black America. He's the one who put out the National Survey of Black Americans and the National Survey of American Life. They use him and his model for asking the questions. And I tell you that shit is, it be asking the wrong questions, nigga, because he coddles whiteness. Of course, he don't want Black people to talk about systemic racism from the lens to which we respect it and understand it. We're not afraid of them white boys killing us. Them white boys are afraid of us killing them. That's why they the ones that want the people in authority walking around America with guns out and shit. Even when they're called to police in predominantly Black spaces, they want to come in with the guns blazing, and that's their fear. Stop psychology. You will make it like it's our fear. That's their fear when they have to deal with niggas. Niggas not scared of them white boys. There's not enough of them. There's enough white people for, like, if they wanted some like militia and all of that shit. But no, the white police force killing Black people in America is not the premise of the fear in America. The value that the man has is that any of that violent energy will never get out. There will never be a time when it's acceptable for him to be physically violent towards anyone else in the world. And what I see happening is that anger and suppressed violent energy, if not expressed through sports and athleisure, way to get that alpha male energy out, if that's what we're calling it, if you haven't found your creative way, then yes, those who have proximity to you can bear the blunt of it. And while not all of those men engage in the actual physical violence, even then, against their women and children, It's the verbal violence that they would then be justifying. Knock your ass out. I'll do this and that. Nigga, stop woofing. There are billions of people in the world. You can go find any of them that you want to take your anger out. It does not have to be the woman who said I do to you, who accepted you, and she doesn't have to accept verbal violence, threats of violence, terrorist threats, like they did Allen Iverson, however the white man wants to call it. Again, those are his issues and what he's dealing with. For Black folks, when we go get love or go get care, it is because there is that position of self-love where one has identified, I need help with what I'm going through. And what they don't like in their system is where a nigga comes in and he says, well, the treatment plan that I am willing to accept is going to have to touch on this, this, and this, but I am not willing to go into those past traumas. They have to respect that. They have to be willing. Don't make a nigga try to talk about what his dad and mom did or did not do. That might not be where they're at. They cannot force it. They do have to be patient with them, and they do have to be willing to listen to some hard stories that, you know, may have the undertones of racism rooted in his experiences, right? His experiences with violence, right? And non-violence. When did you feel like you were the biggest coward? Or when did you feel like you could have protected somebody but didn't? When did you feel like you should have been defended? When did you feel like somebody should have defended you but didn't? When did you feel like you were the most vulnerable? Nah, you can't do that to no New York nigga who's, nah, nigga, not everybody's at a place and position to be able to receive all that. Oh, but when they are, they should have access to the type of care and practitioners that they need. If they want to talk to a Black man that is not gay, they should have access to him. And if they would feel more comfortable speaking with a Black woman, they should have access to her. Um, Cabrini Thursdays. Thank y'all for rocking with me, man. I am B1 Brother Moses, and it's not always about talking shit and talking trash. Sometimes we got to put the actual work out there. Those are the real names. Those are the real people. If you want anything more about James Jackson, we already know we can tell people just to Google it. So I did pretty much of a good job talking about who he was. I did name his accolades, the things about him. I can't tell you why. In my personal opinion, I say it's because he cuddled up to whiteness and was married to a white woman for 40 years. But because he made himself accessible and available to the white psychology and psychiatry world, he is the man. And if you don't like it, fuck you. Nigga, you got to deal with it. That's a you issue. In America, we only got so many of the ones that we can deal with. That's their one. And he looks just like Jonathan Majors. So I'm going to show him one more time so we can remember James Jackson. He was an African-American man. He did marry a white woman. They were married for like 40 years. We're not going to Jack Johnson him, but he does not get a pardon. I talk all the shit that I want because I married me a Black woman. He the one married a white woman. That's a him issue. And other than that, his contributions to psychology have been noted, including the survey style approach, the National Survey for Black Americans. His works then opened up asking the questions specifically about the Black experience, and those who learned from him and went on to and teach at other places and make themselves accessible are all a part of this grand mission that says whether or not therapy can even be effective for Black folks. First, we need the Black practitioners to get off their own biases and stop assuming that there's a one size fit all model for therapy. If it works for white people, it should work for Blacks. If it works for Asians, it work for a Black. No, that one size one fit model does not work. It does not exist. Secondly, the nuances to the Black experience go deep. They're not just his sexual orientation or his religious affiliation. He could be a Hebrew Israelite and say, I have the right to multiple wives. And if that's what he's coming in to talk about, he's going to stand on his religious principles. I don't know if they have much that's going to overcome spiritual dogma as a synthesis for the traumas they're putting other people through. And to be a practitioner of psychology, I would hope that when we say effective, they're able to help break some of those things. If a Hebrew Israelite is actually causing verbal or threatening harm to his wives, girlfriends, whatever we want to call them, children, their children, because he cannot correct his verbal, in his mind, he is right. And so all of the families that would continue to intergenerationally keep passing forth this message that if I'm big enough to whoop your ass and I can beat your ass, that makes me right, you wrong. No, that shit makes you shot, stupid. That shit does not help. Nigga, all you is a big ass target, not just on your back, but on your chest. They have enough prisons. We have to do better at not having the messages that send more black men to jail. And if you're telling a black man that he's entitled to multiple wives and therefore the women should submit to him and his children and all of that shit, and all of their children need to know their place and all of that, all right, we'll see where that goes. What we also hear is that manosphere rhetoric where they're blaming the black woman in general for psychological abuse. They're not blaming the white man, it's the black woman. And with those two great dangers at the spiritual sense, where the black man's masculinity is tied to his religious sense. He is God, he's the brother of Jesus Christ. Only God can judge him for the way that he's screaming and yelling on the side of the corner. If that be the case, it doesn't make it any safer for the people that he does feel, he can scream and yell at and be as violent or non-violent as he chooses. But they just have to sit and wait for him and hope that he never chooses to be physically violent, that at best he will only be a screaming fat fucker like the fat Jamaican Marcus Garvey. But if that black man who is very capable of exercising his violence decide that he now wants to be violent, it is our prayer and assumption that he doesn't make that violence towards his wife or the wife's wives, the sister wives, like that level of violence. If at any time you ought to be able to go find an enemy that you can really call your enemy. And they seem like they could be more than willing. You got Ukraine, if you're a Hebrew Israelite, like the Palestine, if you want to go fight right now, it seems like a plane ticket being $1,000. They got Uber Lyft, they got Uber Eats. I don't care what you do. If you are a black man and you're telling me you can't make $1,000 to get the fuck up out of here, I already I believe these niggas. Oh, well, I can't go. I can't return. And my situation would be this and that. Yeah, all the little excuses that niggas keep making. Spiritual. And now it's personal. They feel like the Hebrew Israelite cause is a way of helping that transition of those black men who've made mistakes time and time again. And we're not affording you with multiple girlfriends because now you wear all black and it's frizzled, and you put on this uniform. Now you're cosplaying, so you get more wives now. Nah, there's some wisdom and shit that's supposed to be inside of you that when women are ready, and if that, and I know for a fact that a lot of them Hebrew Israelites are not multiple wife having Hebrew Israelites. They're just the niggas who perpetuate the ideology of having multiple wives to their advantage because it allows them to never have to deal with those internal hurts and harms. You know what I'm saying? When were there those episodes in their lives where they weren't so big and bad? The white people trying to be police and judges and they need all the authority. That's the Hebrew Israelites to me, giving themselves a position of authority that other people are bound to respect. And if those other people don't respect it, then you'll yell at them and shit. You're just going to yell some more. Now, it was never about the yelling. It was never about the violence that one is even able to enact against one person or against multiple people. We do not see records and records of Hebrew Israelites today that are going out being violent. They are not engaging in any armed conflict wars against any of the enemies that they would claim to have. So if that's not going to be their message, one of violence, then they are just as non-violent acting students like Martin Luther King Jr. And with their exception of so many Europeanized, very, very white people as Latin Americans or Hispanic or whatever it is that they want to call them, they're still chasing whiteness and giving credence to interracial marriage and accepting other ethnicities and other tribal groups that when we look at their 12 tribe chart, oftentimes we would say, yeah, I think some of these men are giving encouragement to dating outside of the 12 tribes, and they know it. They're just having a good sermon and a good old boys. But outside of that, it is the barbershop becoming a space where if they're looking to promote mental health services, I would say yes. They either got the church or the outside church classes or the barbershop. But outside of that, they really do not have spaces where they can promote a healthy mental health conversation. The church is the one that has to correct for the way it is propagating man first. And if they're not willing, if the Black Church Baptist, the Baptist, Southern Baptist Convention, Northern Baptist Convention, I don't give a fuck which one it is, they are the ones propagating it. Man first type doctrine. And as long as they keep doing that in America, there will be a separation of church and state. We will see that they are ineffective. The gays can keep winning. Men can keep breeding fucking Rottweilers and pit bulls together on some nasty shit. And, you know, life is what it is. We'll be $34 trillion in debt as a Christian-based society. 33 trillion with a T. And that's just the funded, not even the unfunded liability for taking care of our elders and shit. Them being able to go to actual hospitals and shit. All of the unfunded liability that America doesn't want to pay for. And so being that deep into debt, and we're still going into our slavery, serving them, though it, we can be fired for 5 minutes late after devoting 5,000 hours. You could work for a company for 17 years and still get fired for being late by 5 minutes. And the person who has the power to fire you over that 5 minutes, even though they've paid you whatever they've paid you at minimum wage, median wage, or even a little bit more, they could have paid you a little bit more, but that just like that, they could fire you for 5 minutes. The biggest grievance that one would have is that today we have a strong Hebrew Israelite message that says, take your ass back into that slavery. Go to slavery and deal with the mental stress and anxiety, depression, or whatever it is that you need to deal with. But deal with it from the lens of a slave. And as long as you're the man of your household, then you're good. And so thus then the perpetuating of all of these wives or girlfriends, and our prayer is that those men are not in the mind or in the heart to cause a great deal of harm in their inability to respond to the stresses and anxiety of the world. What we see and know to be true is that the Hebrew Israelites that do get devout and start they put on the whole uniform and everything, and they go out in the streets, they're going out there to yell and some shit. But it's not really like they're not doing anything. They're just going out there to yell. Like, if you need to go scream and shit, go scream. It sounds pretty plausible. Other than that, go sit your ass down in a classroom somewhere. It doesn't sound like it's doing no big nothing. And so if they're not going to be allowing those very men who feel like violence is the answer to be violent, they're not recruiting those men so that the Nation of Islam is not recruiting those men to go and express their violence in America against an enemy, then these accommodationists, these integrationalists, these go back to your slavery camps, all of these folks are really still dealing with the issue of how will you treat women then, since you're not going against the men anymore. And if you're only going to go against women and their bad behaviors, then therapy might as well just be the name answer. Accepting white therapy, accepting white woman's therapy, accepting the Asian who graduated therapy, accepting everybody else who's graduated and got their degrees in psychology, except any other groups, because the black man telling you what to do and being accredited for it, well, I guess we won't get that. When that black man is finally willing to say, yeah, I am the one who needs to deal with the me issues, the me wanting to be violent or justifying violent, the me wanting multiple women or wives or girlfriends or whatever it is, the slut, the whoring, me wanting to do the whoring. When that black man says, when I'm ready to identify what makes me courageous versus what makes me a coward, I want them to have the access. That access will have to come through education, though. And so I think we would need the opposite of what America is doing, which is shutting the door on people who are interested in American psychology and the Black American psychology. Those who are interested have every right to criticize Black folks, to look in and say, yeah, these niggas ain't doing shit. That shit is driving big bags, big bags. And yes, there are Black men who are very sensitive about our image, and we don't like that. It should make us fight harder. It should make us show a better image and to continue to put strong images of black men out there. But likewise, we are real. There are some images of black men that are not our strongest image. W.E.B. Du Bois dying in Ghana, Africa, it's a strong image for those who are Pan-African, not African American, but those who want to leave America, like those who want to presume their African side, it looks good. Like go over there and be African if that's what you want. But for those who want to see the progress actually realized in our lifetimes here in America, it's going to be our work to do as black men to make those examples known. And while we can keep finding the examples that aren't so good, it's up to us to keep putting both out, those that aren't so good and those that are actually good. Some black women are like, find us examples of good black men, which is why I want to show this one image one more last time. I don't know if this nigga is good, but I am gonna laugh at this motherfucker one more time before I get up out of here. I sure am. Cause y'all ain't finna tell me this nigga don't look just like Jonathan Majors. That nigga look like Jonathan Majors. I mean, he got older and shit, of course, but that shit look just like Jonathan Majors. And my real outro. This may not have been for you. This just may have been for somebody that that, they like black on black conversations, blackity black talk, pro-black. They're familiar with the conscious movement and shit. So this may have been for them. Share it with them. But be sure to hit that like on the way out. Appreciate you for rocking with me. I am B1 Brother Moses. That's all I got right now. And I am done. I'll holler at y'all a little bit later. Today is Cabrini Thursday, so you never know what's going on in these YouTube streets. Just be on the look. It could be a whole Native American Indian taking on one of the Hebrew Israelites, or you might see the Moorish Science Temple come out and they get to talking about me. We the Moorish Science and we invented this. Man, you never know what you're gonna see in these YouTube streets and shit, man. But hopefully contemporizing black psychology with who is the black leading psychologist and who taught all of these people on what it meant to criticize black in psychology in the actual space, not just in our minds when we think anybody can talk about black folks. No, who was the black psychologist guy? Now you know his name is James Sidney Jackson. He one of them Jacksons, and you can criticize him on your next time, but I've taken me a good little amount of time to talk shit about him and so forth in this topic of intermarriage. And the tragic mulatto story continues next time, only on the B1 Network. I'll see y'all next time, man. All right.